The Revolution Podcast, episode 37, The Dark Tower.
Hi, you're listening to Revolution Podcast. This is Maria Howell as Grace on Revolution.
Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Support for the Revolution Podcast is provided by listeners like you and our affiliation with HostGator. Not only does HostGator host over 8 million domains and provide powerful, reliable hosting, HostGator is environmentally friendly. Learn more about HostGator and their renewable energy credits by visiting goldenspiralmedia.com/HostGator today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody. I'm Daryl.
And I was wrong.
Well, yes, you were. So, are you going to go by Jeremy today, or are you going to go by something else? What are we
Today
doing
I'm Kiwi Eater.
Kiwi Eater.
Yes.
Do we want to get this out of the way right now, or do you want to wait till we get to that point?
I can just eat it during. There's a lot of kiwi there.
There are 3 kiwis. That was the deal.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we have 3 kiwis you're chewing on there. I peeled them and sliced them for you.
The work is done. So
I tried to make it easy for you. It was, because they can be kind of messy, kind of juicy. And
Yeah.
It's a very juicy one. Bought today, so I'm sure they were picked yesterday.
Yes, fresh.
Fresh. No.
Wherever kiwis are grown.
That's right. I don't know that they are native here to Oklahoma where we're at, but wherever you're at, we hope that you're having a great time, and we thank you for joining us for this podcast as we are talking about the season 1 finale of Revolution entitled The Dark Tower. This episode was written by Eric Kripke and Paul Grelong. No surprise, right? Eric is the dude, right? So
Yeah.
No surprise that he would write the season finale, and directed by Charles Beeson, and he seems to be one of their top directors as well. So that's typically what we see: season premieres, season finales, and then a few along the way.
Right.
The big boys make sure they handle all of those.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of important pieces to be played in just the right way.
Or executed.
Yeah. Yes. And boy, was there a lot of pieces. Look, we've got a lot to talk about today. The season finale was literally mind-blowing. Is it too soon for that? There's a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right to it. We have a little bit of news information, and it won't take long, and then we'll get right into our episode. All right, so if you're listening to this podcast, we are assuming that you have seen the season finale, the season 1 season finale of Revolution, and if not, you're going to get spoiled. You're going to get spoiled here in just about 15 seconds. So, if you haven't seen the finale, turn this off and go watch it. But
Do it.
we've known this for a while, but we haven't said anything because we didn't want to be spoilers. But in this episode, the finale, Nora died.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's no longer with us. Daniela Alonso, who plays the character of Nora, she already has another job lined up. And we knew that she had a job lined up, but we didn't say anything because if she's got a job lined up, then the reason is that she's not going to be on this job very much longer.
Pretty much.
According to IMDb, this show, and I don't know if you pronounce it Sila or Sila or if it's just Sila. I don't know. It is S.I.L.A. So I guess I'm going to say Sila.
That works for me.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like NCIS.
It could be, or it could be like S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers show, right? So I'm not sure. Let's go the NCIS route for now, which would be Sila, and she's one of the leads on that show. It's currently filming. According to IMDb, it's not going to be out until 2014, so I don't know if it's like a mid-season or what the deal is. It'll be on NBC. So for those of you who are mourning the loss of Nora and really like the work that Daniela does, you don't have to mourn too long for her loss because she will be back on TV soon.
Next year.
Yeah.
You say 2014, and I'm like, oh, that's like 10 years away. No, it's not.
No, it's 6 months away.
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah,
assuming.
So, yeah, that's if it comes back in January. So look for that, and hopefully that'll help ease your pain a little bit. The only other item that we have for, I guess we have 2 items for our news segment. One is Revolution related and one is not. So why don't you go ahead and take the footnotes that Aaron gave us this week.
All right. Well, Aaron's footnotes, or his journal rather, is titled "The End," and he kind of mourns that. He makes some remarks at the beginning about how he thought the blackout was the worst thing that was possible. Turns out he was wrong, and he was culpable in it. So then he mourns the fact that fate's irony has caused him to have written the code for the operating system for a top secret government facility. So he made one comment that I really thought was kind of interesting, how he spent the last few months with Rachel desperately trying to get her to help stop blaming herself for what happened. And all the while, he's hating her and wants her to soak in everybody's death. And I'm like, I agree with Aaron. So I can't say anything differently. Go Aaron! So I think he had some good points there, but I don't think he needs to take this as bad as he is, but we'll probably get into that later.
Well, I think you're right. You're right. Later's probably the better time for that.
So that's about all the journal is his lament.
So that's it. It's over on NBC.com/revolution. Click on exclusives, and it's called Aaron's Footnotes. And I encourage you to go through and read all of those from the whole season. They've been doing those. They're really insightful and give us some little tidbits to kind of fill in some of the journey along the way, like Jeremy just mentioned. These are Aaron's thoughts. So go check those out if you haven't already. The last piece of news that we have, and this is fresh off the presses, I got tweeted this from a friend of mine just within the hour or so, and Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con is coming up in mid-July. Clint and I will be there. Clint does the Fringe podcast with me, and I know most of you are aware of that. A few of you have found us specifically for Revolution and may not be familiar with Clint. But Clint and I are attending San Diego Comic-Con in July, and we'll be covering that for Revolution. We'll be covering it for Almost Human, but we also will be covering it for the average fan, just stuff that we find interesting. So we will be putting out several podcasts while we are at San Diego Comic-Con. But the panels are starting to be announced. So these are not necessarily panels. Most likely they are. But right now it's being classified as the TV shows that are attending Comic-Con. So I'm just going to read through these. The 100, Almost Human, Arrow, Big Bang Theory, Community, Dracula, Falling Skies, Family Guy, The Following, Game of Thrones, Grimm, Intelligence, Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, The Originals, Person of Interest, Revolution, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Simpsons, Sleepy Hollow, The Tomorrow People, True Blood, and The Walking Dead. And those are just the TV shows. A couple of movies have been announced, which Warner Brothers Pictures has something they're going to do in Hall H. We don't know exactly what that's going to be, but The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is also going to be there on Friday. So for us, like I said, Almost Human is one that sticks out to me. Falling Skies, I love that show. I'll try to go to that one. The same with The Following, even though we don't do Golden Spiral Media stuff on those two shows. Revolution was mentioned. We'll obviously be covering as much of that as we can. Person of Interest is another show that I thoroughly enjoy. And then there's some new shows in there as well. Intelligence, I believe, is new. Sleepy Hollow, I believe, is new. The Tomorrow People, I believe, is new. And there might be a couple of others. Dracula, I know, is new. So there's some really cool stuff that's going to be happening. Always good stuff at San Diego Comic-Con. We will be covering it for you and bringing you as much information as we can. If there's a Revolution panel, we'll be there. We'll record it. We'll release it as a podcast. Anything else that we can do. Last year, we were fortunate enough to gain press access to the Fringe cast and interview the actors for Fringe. We're going to try to do that for Revolution this year, but there is no guarantee of that. We tried to get it for Revolution last year, and they denied our request because it was already full or whatever. So anyway, we'll try, and if we get that, as much as we can, we will bring you. That's what we'll do. So very much looking forward to that. Hopefully one of these days you can go to Comic-Con with us.
One of these days, I would love to go to Comic-Con.
You would enjoy it, I know that.
When I don't have a 9-to-5 job.
What? Clint and I have had 9-to-5 jobs up to this point.
True, that's true.
And he still does. All right. Well, that's it for the news. So we've got some more that's news type of stuff, but I want to save it toward the end of the podcast. I really want to get into this season finale of The Dark Tower, but I do have some more stuff regarding what Golden Spiral Media is going to be doing between now and when Revolution comes back. We'll talk about that after we do the quote of the week, so stay tuned for that as well. So let's get into the episode recap. The episode begins in the tower with Miles and Monroe prepared to shoot each other with coil guns. Members of the tower start shooting at them, and they escape, along with Nora, through a side door. The door leads them to an aqueduct. Miles and Monroe are washed out to a lake, but Nora manages to grab a hold of a pipe and make her way back into the tower. Inside the tower bunker, Randall retrieves a hidden key card. The tower people let Rachel, Charlie, and Aaron know that if they even try to get to level 12 and turn the power back on, the tower people will kill them. Outside at the militia camp, Tom has captured Major Franklin and appears like he will allow Franklin to go home to his wife. However, when a soldier leaves to go get a horse for the Major, Tom shoots Franklin and makes it look like he fired at Tom first. At daybreak, Tom orders the militia to put a load of explosives to the tower door, and they blow their way inside. At the lake, Miles wakes up on shore and finds Bass waiting for him. Bass punches Miles and they go at each other with all they have. Suddenly, they are fired upon from a distance. Monroe recognizes that it is a militia member, and he identifies himself as General Monroe. However, the man fires at him again. When Monroe ducks for cover, Miles has vanished. Monroe is captured by the militia and tied up in his tent. Inside the tower, Aaron starts messing around with the computers and discovers that the operating system for the tower is based on code he wrote while at MIT, and they then sold to the DoD. Rachel gets Grace away from the others and tries to convince her to give them access to level 12, but Grace insists it's too dangerous. Rachel knocks Grace out, steals her keycard, and heads off to level 12 with Aaron and Charlie. In flashback, we learn that the turning point of the relationship between Miles and Monroe occurred 10 years after the blackout. A rebel bombed a restaurant and injured Miles. Monroe not only killed the rebel, but killed the man's wife and children too. This crossed a line for Miles, and the only reason Miles hasn't killed Monroe is because of their childhood oath of lifelong brotherhood. Back at the militia camp, Miles sneaks into Monroe's tent and cuts off his bindings. However, he tells Bass to run and then quickly alerts the militia that Monroe is escaping. Now, having cleared out the militia camp, Miles enters the tower through the hole Tom blew open. Back inside the tower, Team Rachel arrives at the door to level 12, but the group of tower people are guarding it. Nora sets up an explosive booby trap and lures them toward it, but they see the tripwire and avoid it. Nora steps out and throws a fire extinguisher to set off the explosives. It works and all the tower people are killed. However, Nora is also injured badly. The militia is quickly approaching, and Rachel believes they only have time to do one thing: either save Nora or turn on the power. Charlie pleads with Rachel to save Nora, but she refuses. She takes Aaron to level 12. Miles arrives a few minutes later, but it's too late. Nora dies in his arms. Team Rachel arrives at level 12, but Tom and the militia head them off. A gunfight ensues, and Miles arrives with Charlie to help Team Rachel fend off the militia and gain access to the secured area. Aaron gains root admin access to the computer and executes the command to turn the power back on. Instantly, all around the world, power is restored. We see Julia in Atlanta, Priscilla and her family in Texas, and President Foster in her office. She immediately orders an all-out attack on Philly. Back at the tower, Randall reveals himself. He traps Team Rachel in the control room and enters an adjacent control room protected by bulletproof glass. He tells them that they fell right into his plan. He didn't care about Monroe. He only cared about getting the power back on so he could wipe out Atlanta and Philadelphia. Once they are wiped out, a new United States can be formed. He launches intercontinental ballistic missiles at the East Coast capitals, declares himself a patriot, and shoots himself in the head. Rachel and the group can only watch on in horror as the missile GPS systems track closer and closer to their intended targets. The final scene takes us to the United States colony in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. A man is repeatedly turning the light in his office on and off just to make sure it works. Another man approaches him and says, "Sir, Randall Flynn did it. It's time to go home, Mr. President." All right, that is the episode recap. A lot to put into the episode recap this week. I try to keep it like 3 minutes long at the most, and it was around 4 this week.
Is that it?
So I might have been talking a little bit faster than normal to try to get it all in there. But
Let's
we
take
have a
my
lot
breaths.
to discuss, too. So let's
Yeah.
get into our episode discussion. All right, Jeremy, I gave this episode 9.5 Patriot Acts. And what I mean by Patriot Acts is we had the act of a self-proclaimed patriot that took his own life.
Not spying on your citizens.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. What about you?
Well, I
You
gave
just
it
finished off the Kiwi.
I did.
You
I
need
gave
to
it-
save a piece for when we actually get to talk about it.
Heck no, they're good.
Well,
And I wanted to get to the cookies.
uh-huh.
I gave it 3 kiwis,
Uh-huh.
and I gave it 9. And I know we keep using this, but
Uh-huh.
sudden but inevitable betrayals.
Yes, of course. So we both gave it 9s this week. I gave it 9.5, I guess. So although I did think about giving it a 9, but I stayed up with the 9.5. So we've got the episode discussion kind of broken down into segments again this week. Although everyone is kind of still together, there was still some pockets where they're very much doing their own thing. We had a nice pocket of Miles and Monroe. We had a nice pocket of Tom and Jason, and you know how it was. And so we still are kind of segmenting them this week, but there will still be quite a bit of bleed over.
Yeah. And bleed over. There was a lot of blood in this
There was
episode.
a lot of blood, although probably a bloodier episode last week.
I don't know. We got the discretion this week. I didn't see it last time. Parental discretion.
Yeah,
advised or
no, you're
whatever.
right. You're right. But I think that might have been for the one thing that
At the end,
at the end.
gray matter on the wall.
Well, okay. But yes, I was thinking of when Miles throat stabbed
Oh, yeah,
the guy.
that was pretty bad,
That
too.
was- yeah, probably one of those, if not both of those.
Yeah.
But because there was a lot more blood splatters last week with the
True.
rail guns and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But anyway, let's start with Tom. I think just because I put this first, not because it occurred first in the episode, but
Because it's
I-
the shortest.
yeah, and I wanted to kind of get to the meat of the episode afterwards. So, Tom is clearly taking over the Monroe militia.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of himself. Although I loved what Franklin told him, because I had the same thing in my notes and didn't realize that Franklin had told him until my second watch through the episode. And Franklin basically said, "What are you the leader of? Are you this little group of militia out here in the middle of Colorado? That's all you're the leader of,
Right.
you know." But he is the leader of this little group right here. Trying to think, it was Major Franklin was the one guy standing in his way. And when he told the guy he was going to give him a horse and let him go back to his wife, I'm naive, I guess, because I actually
Yes, you
believed
are.
he was going to do it. And here's why. He had said that the difference between him was the way that he treated his people. And just shooting him dead on the spot was something that Monroe would have done. So the people believed that he would be different from Monroe. So I believed that he would make a different decision than what Monroe would have done. So yes, for a few seconds, however long it took him to betray his words to Franklin, I really thought that he was going to let him go.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
Yeah. I can't blame you for that.
Yeah,
Like I
this-
said, I was naive and dumb.
I know that I missed on the Monroe thing, but to be quite honest, I stopped believing in that last week.
Mhm.
But I had to go with it because I wanted some kiwi. um,
Yes.
and you paid for it and sliced it for me, so hey.
Hey, you won on that deal.
I did. Anywho, Tom, I think this is the betrayal that I was looking for. And
Okay.
unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to be wrong about Tom being redeemed. I think that Tom is going to die as a bad guy.
You know what? I have a better feeling about Monroe becoming redeemed at this point than I do Tom becoming redeemed at this point.
Well, I always I have said in the past, I think Tom would die and be redeemed in his death. And now I think Monroe, early next season, is going to die and be redeemed in his death.
Okay, we'll talk about that because
So-
I don't fully agree with that. But
Mhm.
Tom definitely is not a leopard whose spots are going to change.
Right.
He's had opportunities here a few times to do that, and I love the line, and it is up for quote of the week when Jason says that his head hurts from the how quickly he turned sides, or however he termed it. You'll hear it when we get to quote of the week, but that's all Tom is doing. He is looking at any given moment for the greatest opportunity to serve himself. And we definitely saw that. We've seen it all season, and the last 2 episodes have definitely given us clear illustration of that.
Yeah.
So, how long before Jason's sudden but inevitable betrayal?
Well, I don't think it counts as a betrayal if he's not really on his dad's side. Oh man, at the end of the episode when they're outside the door, I wanted Jason to just go pow,
pop Tom.
Yeah,
but I would have been sad because I love Giancarlo Esposito, man.
I like the actors. I love the cast that we have.
I do too.
It's a good cast. We have a lot of enjoyable dialogue between the characters, but to see Jason actually put an end to his dad would have been great.
Yeah.
As bad as that sounds, especially coming up right before Father's Day. Anywho,
I suddenly have a desire to create a Father's Day meme between Jason and Tom and put it on Facebook.
I hate you. No.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah. But I don't know. I definitely think Jason is going to betray his dad, I guess. He's going to leave him. He's not going to side with him. We see that throughout the episode. I love the episode when he takes out the Major.
Yes.
When he shoots him, or takes two shots, throws the pistol down and takes his out and pops him. I'm like, that's Tom.
That is Tom.
I loved that scene.
Yeah.
Because it just shows how ruthless he still is.
It shows not only how ruthless he is, but how smart he is. I mean, he had that planned out.
Right.
And he didn't just go in there and decide to do that at the last second. He's really thinking through some things. He's smarter than I have given him credit for in the past. Not that I ever thought he wasn't smart, but he's smarter than I've given him credit for. I still think that Miles is probably the smartest guy on the show, particularly tactically speaking. But Tom is he's a wily guy.
Yeah, he definitely is. But even so, even how smart he is, his son sees through that, and he questions: did he really pull that gun on you? He doesn't say it, but the look on his face in the tent.
Because he knows him.
Right.
Yeah.
So I definitely think Jason's not going to be on his side, even if Jason dies.
Yeah. Jason we'll call it betrayal because he is on Tom's side right now, but it is only because he was forced to because the door's shut and he wasn't inside.
Right.
As soon as he gets a chance to team with somebody else, he will.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he's not on a side that he believes in, and that's more important to him than even living, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move on to, unless you have anything further to kind of to talk about with Tom and Jason.
Well, I'll bring Tom back up if we remember the nukes at the end, and I want to remember the nukes at the end.
Okay, we'll talk about the nukes at the end. Let's talk about Team Miles, or just the whole, I won't even call it Team Miles and Monroe, but Miles and Monroe spent some time together. They were about to shoot each other with rail guns. Neither one was willing to pull the trigger. Then they get ambushed. Ambush isn't really right, but people come to start shooting on them. They exit out the side door into an aqueduct, is what I call it in the recap. I don't know a better word for it. When Miles wakes up on the beach of the lake, Monroe is just waiting for him to open his eyes so the fight can begin. We had a great fight between the two of them until they started getting shot at. What were your thoughts about that, and really what transpired between the two in this episode?
Well, my initial thought there at the beginning was exactly what I said last week. They're not going to shoot each other. We know they're not going to shoot each other. Right. It was a little disappointing to see that I was right about that, because as much as I really wanted those Kiwi, I really wanted Monroe to die. So it was a bit disappointing, but at the same time, I mean, I didn't expect him to die at the very beginning of the episode, so I thought, there's still hope. He'll catch a bullet at some point. So I loved the scene on the beach when he started getting shot at, though.
That was awesome, wasn't it? I'm General Monroe. Pow, pow.
Yeah.
I really thought there was a chance that he was going to die, too. Until Miles said why. He says, you're asking the wrong question. You haven't asked why I haven't killed you.
Right.
That was a great scene. I think that's up for quote of the week too. There were so many great quotes in this episode. But I had a feeling, it kind of got broken up into like 3 or 4 segments. So that's cool that they do that. So we had them fight on the beach. We had Monroe shot at, and then Miles is gone. The next time they see each other, they're kind of out in this field with trees nearby, where they had to take cover under when the helicopter started shooting at him.
I love the fact that he was also getting chased by a helicopter.
Yeah,
it's like,
they weren't shooting at Miles; they were shooting at Monroe, which was awesome. Yeah, that's true, Jeremy. That's a good point. But I thought that what they were doing was they were getting Miles and Monroe alone. It wasn't a pressure situation. It was just mano a mano. Let's settle this between us. Let's not settle this because there are other people around and I have to save somebody. Let's settle this between the two of us. But you know what? That's what they did in a way.
Yeah.
They got to verbalize to each other what had led them to that point in their lives.
Right.
And then through the flashbacks, we got to learn what had been the dividing, demarcation between the two of them. With Miles, the bomb that went off in the restaurant on Miles' birthday, and then that's what crossed a line for, or pushed Monroe in a different direction. But what pushed Miles in a different direction was when Monroe then killed the kids, I think, and the wife, especially the kids, though. To me, that was the big deal, of the guy who bombed them. So it was really interesting to see what had really put them into this position that they were in.
Well, to be quite honest, I don't think, and this might sound a little radical, I don't think Monroe crossed the line by doing that, personally.
By killing the wife and kids.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit more old-fashioned justice.
It is, definitely.
But at the same time, I mean, it prevents somebody from coming back and taking him out because he took their dad out. It may sound cold. It may be cold. But he wanted to take care of his friend. And honestly, yeah, it'd leave a bitter taste in your mouth. But he's done so many other things that I don't see that as being...
Yeah. It was so enlightening to me. And, you make a valid argument. I mean, yeah, it is a little old school, a little Old Testament
biblical
type of where the one person sins, the entire family is wiped out.
Right.
But it was just, I loved it because it showed what Monroe was willing to do for the sake of their friendship, their brotherhood.
Right.
But it also showed what Miles was willing to do or not do for the sake of their brotherhood. He was not killing Bass because of this childhood oath of brotherhood that they made. And that meant so much to both of them that they were really shaping their life decisions, or some major life decisions around that, but in different ways. So for me, it was really, really a great dynamic, fascinating in a lot of ways. And I don't think they've hugged it out yet, but I think that they have a better understanding of each other. And with the nukes at the end of the episode and the president coming back into play, which we'll get to, it really does reshuffle the deck in a whole lot of ways.
Yeah.
I could see these two guys ending up on the same team again. Could you?
I don't want to. I don't know. I can see it because I think the writers might want to do that, but at the same time, man, I don't know. I honestly, the fact that they're together is the reason I took 5 points off of the show. But the show was so good that I gave it a 14 out of 10. So
I see.
But the fact that that they're mending the relationship so quickly.
I don't think the relationship is mended yet, and it's so fragile right now. It could be broken and shattered in an instant.
It is, but I think this solidifies the fact that Miles will never attempt to kill Monroe again.
I don't think that. I think that that's what they want us to think, but it could also equally mean that when he does kill him, it's going to have more significance. The audience is going to feel it more than it would have otherwise.
I want that to be the case, more than where I think they're going. I think it's going to be more of a shallow, we're buddy, hunky-dory, we're going to fight together, and Monroe will die to save Miles, and they'll be happy. I don't want to see that. I want to see what you have to say, because if they can get along, and then at some point Monroe goes out and kills another family to save Miles, and Miles has to go, okay, that's the last straw, pow. That I could accept. And in fact, I would love that, like you said, that very gripping, I guess, it touches the viewer.
Yeah.
But the way I see it going is in a very not touchy, and doesn't really do anything for me way. It's just okay, we decided to make the bad guy the good guy. I mean, it's got to have some consequence. His actions have consequence.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm writing pretty much the same story for my main character for my books.
Okay.
And I don't want to bring that up, but he is Monroe. But at the same time, there are consequences to his actions, and I love the redemption story, but I don't like the cheap redemption story, and I'm afraid it's going to go into that cheap direction.
Well, I think it's way too early to say that. And I'm not saying that you are declaring it as that.
Right.
It could go in a number of different directions right now, and that's what I mean by they've reshuffled the deck in a lot of ways, and not just with the Monroe character, but with a lot of the characters, and frankly with the entire series, and which is great. I mean, you want a finale that is not what you saw coming. We got that.
Yeah.
We want a finale that has a great cliffhanger. We got that.
Yeah.
But we want a cliffhanger too that answers questions and gets us somewhere with these characters, and I think that we got that in spades. And so with the Monroe character, yes, he is alive. Yes, you did eat your 3 kiwis, but I'm so glad that you were wrong, because what they continue to do with that character is very appealing from week to week.
If they do it right, I will love where it's going right now, but I'm just afraid of the result that's possibly going to come. So
okay,
I don't know. I definitely think that I don't know. It's going to be interesting next season. So that's about all I can say.
Yeah.
I can't wait till the fall. So
I'm with you on that.
See this.
All right, let's move inside the tower.
Okay.
If you're ready for that, and talk about the things that we got with Team Rachel. Now, Team Rachel, I'm going to include Nora on that because she was with them most of the time, outside of at the very beginning of the episode when she escaped, but then she grabbed a hold of a pipe and got back in. So we'll talk about Nora certainly during this phase of the show, but we got some really good information on Aaron, some backstory on Aaron, and we got some really good information on Rachel and more backstory with Danny. And a minute ago when I said that they answered questions, and of course they gave us new questions too, that was one of the things that I really appreciated about this episode. I felt like we knew the Miles and Monroe relationship pretty well. But yet they gave us more insight into really what divided them.
Right.
And we'll have some great feedback on it, because some listeners saw that and said, I didn't gain anything new out of that. Some listeners looked at that and said, yeah, it still wasn't believable that Miles would be upset by that. And others, kind of like where I'm at, looked at it and said, I got so much value out of that. It was a little bit of another layer there that I appreciate, and so that's really cool. But the other thing they did was with Danny. You and I have been asking questions. Mostly, I think they've been coming from you. Is do we really know what happened with Danny? Yes, he had asthma. Yes, we know he had this health thing. Well, in this episode, we really got most of what we were looking for. I think on that. Were you happy with that?
A bit. I mean, I was pleased with the backstory that we saw. I mean, but I don't know. I still want more for Danny, but I think they do concentrate on Danny, and I think her love for Danny, and why she would do whatever she did to get this implant into him, to turn off the power to save his life or whatever. I think that actually indicates that Rachel does not like Charlie. To a point. Yeah, no. She loves Danny more. Obviously.
There's no question. And look, I can understand as a mother, she said that he barely weighed 2 pounds. She could hold him in her hand.
Right.
And you are bonded to that child, I would imagine, in a different way than you would a healthy child, because of the intensity of those first months of life.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you treat your daughter that way. What she did to Charlie, to me, is unexcusable. When Charlie says to her, I'm alive, I'm your daughter, and I'm standing right here, and she says, give me the key card, I'll be back, I promise. Come on.
Yeah.
It's just that's got to be so demoralizing to Charlie. So yeah, you're right. It seems obviously clear that she cares more about Danny, at least avenging his death, more than recognizing the life that she has with her daughter.
Right.
Now, when I'm kind of jumping around here. I didn't plan on really getting into this right now, but that's okay.
Sorry. Danny led me into that. So
yeah, and then that led me into this question, which is fine. when they do kind of get reunited there inside the level 12 facility, Rachel, one of the first things that she says to Charlie is, Nora. And Charlie looks at her, she's dead, She's obviously upset. She has every right to be upset that Nora's dead and blame Rachel for it. She has every right, in my opinion, to blame Rachel for allowing Nora to die. Nora was going to die anyway. They could have gone to the medical room. She was going to die anyway.
Yeah.
But she has every right, I think, to be mad at Rachel for the decision that she made. Do you think Rachel feels like she can, now that the button's been pushed and all that stuff, now she can start working on Charlie and actually restore that relationship? Do you think Rachel thinks that she'll have that ability?
She might think that. At the same time, she might resent Charlie for being a memory of a one-night stand with Miles.
She might. I was thinking that too.
So
yeah,
I don't know. It's a good question you ask, but at the same time, I don't know.
I think if she does think that, she's incredibly naive, and I hope that. I mean, yeah, it would be great in a perfect world if mother and daughter could find a way to put the hardships behind them and to build a relationship. And I do hope that for them, but I think in the real world, you've got to work through the issues that you've got before you, and there's some significant issues they're going to have to work through. And I think the show would take that approach to it, that there's not going to be reconciliation in an easy way.
Right. I agree with that. And the reason that I dislike the whole Miles and Monroe thing, because to me it feels so easy, is the same reason I would hate to see next season open up with them, with Charlie and Rachel pretty much forgiving each other. Like, in the course of 30 minutes,
Really?
What do you mean, really?
Did you say you would like that?
No. The reason I'm afraid of the Monroe Miles is for the same reason I would dislike that. It feels artificial. It feels
if
forced.
that happened, I'd be shocked if that happened. But it would be.
Well, I agree. I would too. But I mean, to see them try and fix that so artificially, I could see them trying to rush that relationship to be fixed.
Well, I can totally see them putting their differences aside in order to accomplish a greater good or goal. We've seen them do that already. But as far as them having a genuine relationship with each other, I don't see that coming anytime soon.
Have we seen them actually
ever
together do anything together?
No.
So we haven't seen them push anything aside to reach a common good.
No. Right. Well, no. This going and teaming up to turn the power back on is what they were doing. Pushing the differences aside to even Charlie with Miles. We haven't heard her press him in several weeks on what was happened? It that you did to my mom. But even still, when she was bringing that up, she was putting that difference aside to achieve a greater good.
Right.
I can totally see them continuing to do that, but when the battle is over, they're not going out for cold ones afterwards.
Right. She might go out with Miles.
And might go out with Jason, assuming they'll be reunited soon.
Well, I don't know. Tom might take him back.
He might.
I don't know what's going to happen to this door, but we'll see.
The door.
That's separating Tom and Jason from the rest of the crew.
Right.
So.
Well, we'll get to that. I mean, we won't get to the door. I mean, we'll get to what their options are, I think.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about Aaron. We got some cool backstory on him, and we already knew that he wrote the code that they were using at the tower. So the fact that it was the OS that they had built off of his code, that was no surprise to me at all.
Well, the fact that it was the OS was a surprise to me. I was really thinking it would be the code behind the
program to turn the nanites off. Or
the program that ran the nanites,
okay.
Not the program that ran the software or the hardware in.
Okay. Sure, I can give you that for sure. He was obviously surprised about it.
Yeah.
Apparently something he had done at MIT, and the MIT then sold to the DoD. Again, no surprise there.
Right.
We knew he went to MIT. We knew that the DoD was behind the nanite project, so connected a few dots that we already assumed were connected. But the cool thing that we did learn was that Aaron didn't stumble across Ben.
Yeah.
Ben found him.
I think I may have hypothesized that at one point if I hadn't actually said anything.
You might
thought it.
You might have.
But I love that. I love the fact that Aaron thinks he chose Ben, but Ben actually chose him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ramifications that come from that, and I can't wait to find out where this takes us.
It is so important, and I think you had speculated on that when we first found out that, he was behind it in some way, some significant way, that it was not coincidental that he was there in the cul-de-sac with the Mathesons. But yeah, pretty cool. Again, I don't think that'll be the last of those types of conversations that we have. I don't know that they're going to be discourse that we get to hear about every week.
Right.
But there's more to that story, and then probably maybe more to how they can ultimately overcome this difficulty that they find themselves in, because they're not out of the woods yet.
Right.
I find it very interesting, for sure.
Yeah. Not a whole lot to add to that. It's just it's intriguing.
But it was another part of the backstory that we got this week.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I made this comment on the podcast. It might have been in a side conversation I had with you or somebody else. But frankly, it might have been a conversation I was having about Falling Skies, because I had the same thought about Falling Skies and the Tower People. And Falling Skies starts this Sunday on TNT, and I love that show. At the end of last season, just to kind of fill in the gap of what I'm talking about here real briefly, in Falling Skies, at the end of last season, they find their way to Charleston and meet up with a whole new group of people. Okay?
Right.
And I know I was having a conversation with somebody this week. Well, it was Emily, and I told her that I thought the one of the points of the Charleston people was to add a whole bunch of new red shirts to the mix. And I know we had the conversation on our show last week talking about Lost and how they added the tailies into the mix and they killed them off over time. Okay, that was like a big 2-minute long thing just to say that I thought the Tower people were going to die. I thought one or two of them might live. I never, in my wildest imagination, saw them all getting wiped out
in one explosion.
Fell swoop.
Right.
Yes.
Lots of red shirts there.
Or are there still some alive wherever that little living room, not living room, but the lobby or wherever they were living, the living quarters are, because I saw some younger kids and stuff like that. So did we see all of the Tower people die, or are there still some alive?
I think we still have Tower people left.
I do too. Not many though.
Right.
And the leaders are all dead.
Right? Well, the leaders
Dan is dead.
Dan is dead, and at least I think it's safe to assume Dan is dead. But I don't think that all of the adults are gone. I think you might still have somebody of some import left there. I can't imagine they would take everybody to hunt somebody.
Yeah.
I was disappointed that they were all together at that point in the episode, and that even after having discovered this tripwire, they don't separate. I mean, don't make an effort to spread out.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I knock them for that. I mean, you think you've avoided the obstacle. There's definitely a little bit of suspension of disbelief on a few fronts in that area, and I think we'll probably reserve those comments for the feedback, because I know we have some specific feedback on that scene and the suspension of disbelief. But through that scene, not only did it bring us the death of all the Tower people that were there, it brought about the death of Nora, too. Right. How did you feel about this?
Forced.
Forced, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Explain.
Well, I mean, she was hit in the stomach. When we see the shrapnel explode, it's like shoulder height, head height on the wall, I thought.
Yeah.
This is the first occurrence of any form of shrapnel that we've seen these things cause. The rail guns.
Right.
It was the... I don't know. I mean, it just felt obvious that she was going to die. Everybody knew she was going to die. The conversation between her and Rachel indicated, if you had any doubts before that moment, that she was going to die. And then the explosion, I think they should have just shot her.
Yeah.
Just straight up hit her.
And let her bleed out that way.
Yeah. Don't make some little wall shrapnel kill her.
Well, my first thought was that they did shoot her. It just grazed her, because it was kind of there on the side of her. But when I rewatched it, because you and I did talk about this yesterday, we had lunch together, and you mentioned, I said, I'll go back and rewatch it. And I was wrong. You were right. They did hit a little higher on the wall. They did hit the wall. It must have been shrapnel. If it was the rail gun that they're saying hurt her because of the amount of blood loss, that's really what I was basing it more on than anything else, was the amount of blood loss that she was having. Then there's an inconsistency there. But we've seen that happen before.
Yeah.
When Monroe got shot with a through and through on Annie, it didn't line up with where we saw his wound at the next week.
Right.
I mean, so these things happen. It's TV. So
well, I understand that, but I just wish they would have just shot her.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind main characters dying, or, not really a spoiler alert, but if you've not watched Game of Thrones, lots of people die.
Yes.
And I don't mind that. I don't mind important characters being resolved in such a situation, but sometimes I wish they just wouldn't cop out and hit her with a couple of pieces of concrete.
Yeah, see, and I didn't feel like it was a cop-out. I still believe that there is even though on the shot, if you look at where it hit and all that stuff, it doesn't line up. I still think because of the type of wound that it was, they were intending it to be a railgun wound.
Okay, so you're saying it went through the wall.
I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that that's what they want us. That's what the wound was. No, it doesn't line up with what we saw on screen, but that's TV. That's what I mean by the Monroe and Annie wound. I mean, they want us to believe that she got shot in the chest, and somehow that ended up getting him in the abdomen. And,
right.
He's not that much taller than she is. He's not 3 feet taller than her.
Right.
So I'm just saying that's just the way that it is.
All right. Yeah.
And if it is a rail wound, then it's not cheap. It's not a shrapnel wound. It's an actual, legitimate wound of one of the most powerful weapons we've seen on the show.
Okay.
But
if it's a rail wound, I'll buy it.
But aside from that, she's dead.
Right.
What did you think of the character of Nora and what we got with her over there? Because she was almost the entire season. We got her picked up in
episode 2.
Let's see. It would have been 2 or 3.
Right.
I think it was episode 3.
Okay.
But it might have been. I don't know. It was 2 or 3. But yeah.
Yeah. As a character, I think she was good. I think her strength and role as a female lead to a point kind of helped Charlie develop.
Yeah.
I think it brought some conflict from Miles. I liked seeing that her character brought, but the resolution of her character brings about a relationship with Rachel that might be kindled at some point. I thought it was interesting that she bled out a lot like Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very similar death there.
Yep.
And I think that might show Charlie again. She can't stop it, even though I think at this point Charlie does know that she can't prevent somebody from dying.
Yeah, it's interesting that the 2 women that we've seen on the show that have been the most motherly towards Charlie, neither of them are actually her mother, and they have both now died. Her mother is all that she really does have at this point. I liked the Nora character. I remember mentioning about 6 weeks ago or so that I wished that they would do more with her. I had a bad feeling that they were going to kill her. Well, then they started using her more often, and I really, enjoyed her character. But there was a couple of episodes there where Nora really didn't have any lines at all. She might have been in the background, or she might have had 1 or 2 lines here. But over the last several weeks, we've seen her become a significant character again, and I've really enjoyed her. I'm not sad necessarily that she's gone, because I think that she had a nice, fulfilling arc. She didn't have to die, but her death doesn't confound me either. So I was pretty pleased with what they did with her character for the most part.
Yeah. Except for a few lulls that we didn't see her.
Yeah.
I enjoyed her presence on screen.
What I didn't enjoy in this episode, and this is a minor thing, but the conversation that she's having with Rachel when they are making their way to try to get to level 12, and they have the conversation where, Miles really loves you. You're all he's been talking about, and if it came down to choose between me and you, he would choose you. That's what she tells Rachel. And I'm just like, I felt like they were landing a plane. Those little mini lightsaber things they use to land planes, and they're like directing you in, and they're like saying, looky here, guys. Yeah. Miles is going to have to make a choice over who he's going to choose, so be aware of it. And by the time the episode's over, look, we're a smarter audience than that.
Yeah.
We didn't need that obvious dialogue to set up what was going to happen later on. It was the only purpose of that dialogue, and it was totally unnecessary. I felt like they, they didn't give their audience enough credit for that.
Well, to me, I think that's a lot like, hey, look, it's a truck. When they're getting into a truck.
Yeah.
You know it's a truck. You can see that, but TV has to narrate everything, it seems.
Yeah, and Yoga Kiwi in the chat room, she says no women would actually talk that way. That's probably true, too. Yeah.
They're called wands.
No, they're called mini lightsabers.
Yeah.
Trust me. I know these things. Come on. From now on, all of you are going to call them mini lightsabers, and you're going to thank me for it because it's so much cooler than wands.
Once you've seen it, it can't be unseen.
That's right. All right. So, anything else to say on the Rachel storyline? We got some really cool stuff. I mean, we haven't gotten into the room yet. We're kind of leading up to the finale when they get into level 12. Are we ready to kind of turn towards that? Because that's where Randall kind of gets into play too.
Yeah. We can start at the beginning of Randall and move on.
All right.
Does that sound good?
That sounds good. Take it away.
I think the first scene we see with Randall is when he's getting the key code.
Yep. He steals it from President Bush.
Right. I thought it was pretty disrespectful that he broke the picture, but then I was like, well, he probably can't do it to the current president. That would upset somebody. So,
I didn't think it was disrespectful in any way.
I don't know. It was. I'm not saying it was at this point, but just my first thought was like, really?
Yeah.
And then it was like,
well, to me it made sense because I think they mentioned last week that it was Cheney's protected place.
Okay.
And so Cheney was Bush's vice president, so it kind of made sense that the key card would be hidden behind President Bush.
Didn't it happen in 2013? 2012?
When the blackout occurred. Right. That's not when the bunker and the whole process started.
But I would assume that somebody would, not Cheney, but
Joe Biden,
would be in that office for 4 years before the blackout.
Yeah,
so,
you would think so.
I don't know. I'm surprised they used Cheney Bush as much as they did. But at the same time, I think it's a great place to hide a key card.
Yeah. Hey, and maybe, based on what you just said, who was president when the blackout occurred? Who should be president?
Right.
Well, look, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we did see a president at the end of the show.
Right.
And that wasn't Obama.
No.
So,
heck no.
Couldn't
be.
Maybe Obama's not actually the president on the show. Maybe it's fictionalized from that point forward. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, so the last 5 years or whatever that we've experienced in real life haven't really happened.
Right. Not under Obama. Maybe under some fictional president that they're going to bring into the show.
Okay. I hadn't thought of that.
I'm wondering if there was a picture of Obama on the wall. I know we saw Clinton and Reagan.
We did see
Bush,
Obama.
And did we see Obama?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then forget that theory.
Okay. Crackpot theory.
All right. It's gone.
It's out the window.
Shot down. Rail gun. All right. Where were we on Randall now? Where were you going with that? He got the key card, and then I derailed us a little bit.
He got the key card. Oh, yeah. So he broke it. I thought that was kind of a slick little place to hide it. And then we didn't see him for quite a while.
Right. He's kind of a weasel, right? So he's just been hiding out, right. I would imagine, just waiting for other people to, part the Red Sea and make away the path of Randall.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did.
Mm-hmm. Which is, what we expected last week.
Yeah.
We expected him to come out from the shadows and then screw everything up.
That's right. So, there's the fight there with the militia. Miles and Charlie get them into the level 12 room. They get secured behind the, because you had to have an access card to get into that room. And then they start turning the power back on. Now, I will say that there was another hex set of characters on the screen when Aaron was typing in the commands to get root access and execute the power to come back on, all that stuff. I did everything I could to make heads or tails of it, and I couldn't make any sense of it this week.
Okay.
Pretty disappointed.
So it was just random.
It was just random this week.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because it gave us the cool Easter egg last week, but nothing this week. Unless then you turn that into a cryptogram or something like that, and I didn't go that far to try to decipher it, or any type of other cipher, apply a +1, or I didn't do any of that stuff with it. I just tried it as a hex, and it didn't work. Okay, so now they're inside the room. How do we want to play this out, Jeremy?
Well,
I mean, you were right last week where you predicted they were going right into his plan.
Right.
He definitely revealed as much this week. What we don't know is that if he needed them to even get down to level 12, or if he needed them really because he was all thumbs, as he said. You know what I mean? Or was it a mixture of both? I'm not sure.
I think ultimately it was him just using them as a distraction. I think that he could have done it had he had the time. But since there was not a whole lot of time with him being brought into it, he didn't have as much ability to figure everything out. He used them to
That's possible.
do the work for him. But I think he was a smart enough man to figure it out.
So the blackout was intentional, but if Randall is all thumbs, as he supposes, or not supposes, as he said, then that leads me to believe that he's not responsible for the blackout. If he's not responsible for the blackout, then who is? Or is he not all thumbs as he wanted them to believe?
Okay. I don't think just because you can't program doesn't mean you can't intend on something from happening. I still have a hard time with saying that he would not be responsible for killing the power. It could have been somebody high in maybe a government position that wanted to be president that couldn't attain that position and waited 15 years in order for the power to be turned back on so he can walk out on that platform. Or it could... I don't know who it could be other than Randall. I mean, he knew what was going to happen, I think. I think he's responsible for it.
You know, and maybe he is, but there's so, and this is what I love about the finale. It was a crazy Ivan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a whole new direction right at the last minute, and in an awesome way as far as I'm concerned. But if he is responsible for turning the power off, did this go as planned? Did he intend it to take 15 years to get the power back on? Did it not go as planned? How does the president get involved with it? He was apparently working for the president to get the power back on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the nukes at the end of the episode, is the president aware of that? Did he order that? Or was that completely Randall going and making his own decision? There's so many questions here that I'm not clear on. With him dead, I'm not sure how many of them that we'll get, but I do believe that there are enough people who are still alive that can fill in, maybe the president and his team from that side of the story, and maybe Rachel and Grace from the other side of the story. I don't know, but it's really confusing to me. I'm not sure who did what now at this point, where I was making some assumptions on Randall before this episode.
Well, some of my time travel
here it is. Well,
hinged on Randall.
Let's see here. Raw recording time, that took 59 minutes.
I let it go this week because I actually could have said it in the show notes.
Oh, okay.
Or not in the footnotes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe.
In the news section. So I let it slide, but he kind of hinged on it, and I have a theory about where we could go with that. But Randall was kind of the one that I was driving while he wanted his son back. So it was kind of one of those. Maybe he's the one causing this. At the same time, I think that Aaron, he mentioned about how he was worried about the particle accelerators causing a tear in, what did he say in his notes?
I don't remember how he termed it, but he did mention the particle accelerator.
Particle collider could negate the universe. Concern is a thing of the past. He mentions that, and that it's interesting that he would mention that because, I mean, like I said last week, particle colliders can do time travel, theoretically in sci-fi.
Yes.
But hey.
Yeah, and look, anything's possible in this show. I mean, the show has already proven that with the whole deal of the nanites. I mean, they're willing to go places that are outside the realm of possibility in the year in which it's set. You know, today we can't really do what they're doing with nanites, but it's believable enough. This is what Fringe did really, really well. They took something that was just at the cusp of being able to theoretically be possible and then acting like it is possible.
The fringe of possibility.
That's right. That's where it got its name. And so this is, very fringy in that regard, but I still don't think time travel is going to happen. But I will tell you that after the events that transpired in this in this episode, rather, when you think about if those nukes go off, man, I want time travel at that point because I don't want to imagine, a post-nuclear world that they would be.
Nukes won't go off.
We're almost to that point. In fact, do we want to? Is there anything else to talk about other than what happened there to set up? We talked about the president. We want to talk more about that. Randall's death. Let's talk a little bit more about that, and then let's talk about what the options are because we have Miles, Aaron, Charlie, and Rachel locked in a room.
Right.
Tom and the militia are outside in the hallway. Jason is with them. Monroe is out running around the woods, I guess, trying to look for somebody to kill or lead. I don't know, probably his choice. Is that where all the players are at this point?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So let's see. Where do we want to start with those three topics? I guess let's start with Randall. He killed himself. I don't know if we have anything more to talk about there. He declared himself a patriot. Do we want to theorize on why he called himself a patriot and what why he did what he did?
I don't know. Well, yeah, we can talk about it. I mean, I don't know why he did what he did at the very end of his life.
Yeah.
That honestly makes zero sense to me.
I wonder if the last thing he thought was
before that bullet went through his head.
Oops, I made a mistake. Like Monroe told Rachel last week.
No, I think that I think Randall's decision to nuke the cities and essentially start America over. I think, so we find out what he's a rebel. I think that's interesting. That also leads to the fact that he couldn't have been the ultimate bad guy, as I claimed earlier, because he wanted to restore the U.S. I mean, he's essentially on Nora's side.
Essentially, doing it in a very deranged sort of way.
Right, but ultimately his goal is to unite the United States back to its glory.
Could totally happen. I mean, if we look at, as far as I know, I'm no history buff, not even close, but as far as I know, the closest thing that we would have in our real world of anything like this happening would be the bombs that were dropped in Japan at the end of World War II.
Okay.
So what rose out of those ashes was a more powerful Japan in a whole lot of ways. But no one in their right mind would ever say that was a good thing that those bombs went off, or I'm glad those bombs went off, or, you know what I mean? That's not something you would ever...
Really?
No.
See, because I would almost argue the opposite of that.
Why? How could you? Because of the loss of life that occurred.
The millions of lives theoretically saved by the dropping of those two bombs is incredible. I think both of those cities had maybe total 250,000 people, and it's an awful, awful, awful thing that occurred.
Okay.
I'm not going to say their loss of life was meaningless.
Okay.
But had the United States invaded Japan, the loss of American soldiers, of Japanese soldiers, and of Japanese civilians would have been immense. If we had to ground assault Tokyo, I mean, the collateral damage, just the civilians lost, would have been at least twice what was lost in the cities that were bombed.
Look, I can't deny that.
So what I'm saying is some people would say that the bombs are good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because they prevent a greater tragedy from occurring. Now, you can't necessarily see that even in hindsight, because it was such a horrendous thing that occurred. But at the same time, the justification for before it happened was likely a lot to do with that. I mean, imagine what we would lose. Imagine what they would lose. So the Japanese weren't going to back down.
No, absolutely.
So they would have fought to the last man on that island.
Sure.
So
Sure they would have. And so you make some fair points, but I'm coming from the point of view that still says, and I'm not saying that those bombs were dropped, that was an easy decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
But I still look at it and go, man, I wouldn't wish
no
on anybody. And I'm
right.
not saying that you are. You make some good points. I mean, if you look at what the casualty was, it was civilians and military, through Europe.
Right.
Your points are very valid. But I think that's the mentality that Randall had here,
right.
was that these people are not going to stop fighting each other. They are not going to
right.
back down. They are all on their own agenda, trying to gain their own little plot of land to have power over and people
right.
to possess. And the only way, it's like slapping somebody in the face when they're in a panic mode.
Yeah.
The only way to get them out of it is to slap them.
Right.
And he laid down 2 slaps here as his last act. Well, second to last act on Earth, the last being putting a bullet through his head.
Right.
Shocking for sure, though.
Yeah. Do we know that they were nukes?
We don't know that they were nukes, but Aaron does mention that they were nukes in the footnotes.
Okay.
I was prepared and willing to make an argument that they were not nukes.
Right.
They were just, and again, I'm
cruise missiles or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
But Aaron calls them nukes on his footnotes. Not that he knows, but I think that there's some canon there tied to the show where the word nuke has been used, and so I'm going to go ahead and presume that they are nukes.
Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. So I can say that Randall was truly justified in his head for his beliefs that removing the 2 aggressive colonies would spare the rest of the U.S.
Yeah, because he didn't take out Texas or the California Commonwealth, the wastelands, the plains.
Right. So he's definitely intending on the greater good, at least the way I can see his reasoning. Also, the bullet going through his head, long stretch here. In fact, there's a couple of long stretches here, but I'm going to go ahead and make it since we're here before we move on to any other point.
I think I might know where you're going with this, and it hadn't occurred to me until you just...
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Where am I going?
That he has a device in him like Rachel had,
right.
and he's going to pull an Olivia Dunham.
Yes.
He's going to get a bullet through the head and
live.
Except it's not cortexiphan. Right. It's a tablet, whatever it's called.
The only reason I can see him shooting himself, and this is likely not even going to happen because it's so far out there, but why the heck would he shoot himself before what he wanted to happen happened? There's no way, first of all, there's no way if my goal was to blow up Philadelphia and Atlanta that I would launch the nukes and then shoot myself before they actually hit.
You're absolutely right, because look, he could just as impactfully watched the nukes reach their intended targets, walk over to that window and declare himself as a patriot and shoot himself, just like he did, and would have had maybe a little bit more impact because the bombs, the Team Miles and Rachel would have been reeling from the reality that Atlanta and Philadelphia were just wiped off the planet. So you're right about that. Why did he do it? My only thought is that he accomplished whatever mission he had. Let's assume he is dead. And then so mission accomplished, kill yourself, or he felt like it was only a matter of time before Team Miles got out of that room and he would have been killed by them. So why not make his own decision? Right.
There's one more theory, and if you read, you might see it real quick in there. But he could kill himself because he knows there's a younger version of himself that's about to time travel to fix everything. So, who knows? If he's at the end of his life, he might know that somebody can fix this at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like,
just a theory.
It's fine. I'm not going to say anything
all right
now. As far as him declaring himself a patriot, my thoughts on that are that as they begin to write the history books of this United States, Randall Flynn will be the guy that set in motion the reuniting of the United States.
Right.
and therefore he will go down in history. They may not know that he set the nukes off, because history has a funny way of getting written from a certain perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's written from the perspective of the winners, and really only the perspective they necessarily want you to know.
Right.
And especially if he was doing this on behalf of the president,
right,
they may not want the world to know that he nuked Philly and Atlanta. Either way, it'll be written that he is the guy that sacrificed himself. They may not ever know that he actually put the bullet to his own head, but he sacrificed himself, gave his all to reunite the United States. All hail, patriot, the great Randall Flynn of history.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No.
No?
No. They won't, and the president, to me, is the bad guy.
Okay, you're going there now, huh?
Yeah, well...
We can go there.
We can go there, or we can talk about,
There's only two things left to talk about,
right.
I think. There's that and...
bombing the cities.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Will the bombs reach their destination?
No.
I agree.
Maybe.
How will this be resolved?
All right. The way that I think it's going to be resolved is they're going to kill the power.
Yeah. That's the only option I see, too.
Yeah.
Aaron runs over to the console, turns the power back off. And I don't know anything about weapons. Like, does it take an impact for the warhead to go off? Or does it have to be triggered by some sort of electronic, communication that says detonate? I don't know how they work, folks. And it might be either or. I don't know. Because if it's impact, well, they're up in the air. I don't know any way to avoid impact unless they can divert them into the ocean or something like that. Hey, there's an idea. Divert them into the ocean, maybe.
Maybe.
But the controls are in the other room, so let's presume that's not an option. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. The only option I see is to turn the power back off, and somehow that prevents them from being detonated. They land out in a field in the middle of Mississippi or something. I don't know.
Well, from my many movies watched, my knowledge from unconventional weapons comes from movies. I would think they would need to be armed before they can detonate, and sometimes missiles are not armed until they're closer to their destination.
Jim is actually saying that now. Jim and Doug.
Okay.
Doug is saying in the chat room that they use electronic triggering. Nukes do more damage from the air, so they detonate in the air and spread their thing. And Jim is saying that they have to be armed. So just because they've been fired, it doesn't mean that they're armed.
Right.
So thank you guys for that. I didn't. I did realize the first. But hadn't thought of it. The second point, I didn't realize that, Jim. So thank you guys, both of those.
Well, there's also and I don't know the distances off the top of my head, but there's also another way that a nuke could affect something, and that's a high altitude detonation. Theoretically, if you detonated a nuke, I don't know, hundreds of miles in the atmosphere, the electromagnetic pulse would kill the power at a certain range, and like at a certain height above the United States, it could wipe out the United States power-wise. It'd just kill the grid. That's my generic understanding of how they work.
Okay.
So you don't actually get the atomic detonation, but you get, you do, but it's higher up, so it doesn't affect the people in the conventional thought of a nuke destroying people. So you could have a high altitude explosion. It could wipe out their power, making it easier for them to be taken over. So it's a theory. I doubt that's where he's going.
Well, it does seem to be that's where he's going, because they're going to two specific locations and not kind of a broad.
Right. And he's shooting 4 different nukes at each location.
Right.
So generically speaking, one is enough for that to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so that leads us to the president. Huge turn of events as far as I'm concerned. We had the American colony there in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The whomever comes in and says Randall Flynn has done it, so clearly whatever Randall was doing to get the power back on, at the very least, Randall was trying to get the power back on under command of the president. The nukes are up in the air. That could have been a Randall thing and not a president thing. But we learned that there's a president who's still alive. He's been holed out in Cuba, presumably for 15 years, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And now he's going back to resume the control or the leadership of the United States. Am I making too many assumptions there? Do you have different ideas? Where are you at here?
There's no way that would happen because we have an 8-year term limit for our presidents.
I'm not saying that it would happen.
So, but I'm just saying the American people, quote unquote, would not accept a president in that situation. I don't think they would.
I don't think they would, not only for that reason, but also for the reason of he better have a legitimate reason as to why he's been in Cuba for the last 15 years and not trying to hold the country together from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. If he's been hiding for 15 years, he better have a good reason as to why.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's the president in the sense that we would think he was the president when the bomb or when the lights went out.
Okay.
I think he's the president in the sense as maybe he's the leader of the rebels, or he's something else that he's made himself the president.
That is an option, and I like that, and I thought about that, but my only thought about that was if he is the Monroe of this American colony, or the foster of this American colony, they seem to be working off the assumption that he has some sort of claim to the presidency, the legitimate claim to the presidency. And if that's all he is, then I don't think you could make that assumption. And I might be assuming too much into what I just watched.
I don't think that they're going to make him the former president just because I think there's too much expectation from him if he is the former president.
Okay, it could be.
I think the former president would have done his best to fix the United States after the event instead of waiting until the power was back on. I think that there would have been some effort there.
Okay.
I don't think that a United States president would hold up for 15 years, wait for the power to be turned back on, and then come out of hiding.
Not. I would certainly hope not, and if he did, I don't know why any American would go for that, unless it was the president is dead, the vice president is dead, maybe even the Speaker of the House is dead. You know what I mean? We're talking third or fourth rundown, because there is
it could be the Secretary of Education.
Could be. I don't know what the order is, the pecking order is.
It's Battlestar.
Okay. Is that right?
Yeah, that's who Roslin was.
Okay.
Right.
But I'm saying that let's say that at least the top two are dead, or died 15 years ago, or 115 and 112. I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? But here's at least the Speaker of the House or whatever would be after that.
Okay.
I could go for that in some way. I could go for, okay, they've been protecting this guy because there needed to be some sort of elected order still out there to try to restore order to the United States and unity to the United States. I could start to maybe go for that. Mm-hmm. But I think you and I seem like we're on the same page where if that is the guy that they elected president 15 plus years ago, does it make any sense for them to want him back or for him to have any claim to the presidency?
And I think any claim that they would suspend the Constitution is invalid simply because the United States has fallen apart.
Right.
So there is no Constitution.
I think you might be right there, too.
And they're not going to recognize somebody who claims to be the president, especially when you have it at least standing at the beginning of season 2 is 3 more areas, Texas, California, and the Plains.
In the wasteland.
I don't think I think they're wasteland. I don't think they really have a big army.
Sorry, people who live in the wasteland, you don't count.
So, I mean, you're assuming that somebody is going to step aside because you said that you were president 15 years ago. Well, some of those people may not even know who was president 15 years ago.
Yeah.
They don't care.
It's a fascinating turn of events.
Indeed.
And I'm of the opinion as of today that until proven otherwise, the president is the big bad now. We thought it was Randall. We first thought it was Monroe. We both quickly moved to the fact that we thought it was Randall.
Right.
Okay, we were wrong on that in some level, although he did set off the nukes. That's the worst thing that we've seen done on the show yet. But now, especially since he was veiled, and he could have been veiled because they don't want to unveil him yet. Okay, cool, I get that. Doesn't mean he's bad. It's because they want to blow our mind later with the reveal, you know?
Right.
But I'm going to work on the assumption that he is the big bad for now.
Well, I still think, even though Randall may have had good intentions with reuniting the United States, and that's all in quotes.
Yeah.
I think that at the same time that might have been his intention, we don't know what United States Randall wanted to reintroduce.
That's right.
And we don't know
I can guarantee you it wasn't what it was the day before the power went out.
Right.
Because he wasn't happy with that world.
Right. So why would he pretty much start over?
Right.
So
no, he wants to start over.
It may be somebody that was in the room with him when the lights went out.
Possible.
Despite the fact that I don't know how he could get to Cuba. I mean, he has boats, obviously, but still. Anywho, long story. But I don't know. That's about all I guess I have on that.
I'll just say, and I can't be able to cover them all because I don't even know them all, but this first season has come so far. They gave us the music montage at the beginning of the episode to kind of show us how far they've come. But then you think about it, at the end of the episode, we got more answers with Rachel, more answers with Aaron, more answers with Ben, more answers with Miles and Monroe. Mm-hmm. We now know why the power went out. The power came back on. There is so much that they gave us in this first season. They said that they were going to answer things quickly, and they did. And some people said, well, if they answer things too quickly, they're not going to have any story left to tell.
Right.
And I never was one of those, because you always know that these guys have so much story to tell. They're not going to paint themselves in the corner and go, oh, crap, we shouldn't have wrote that episode. Now I don't have any story. They know what story they have to tell. And if they're telling it quickly, that means there's a lot to tell. And they took the show in a completely different direction, in a way that we never saw coming at the beginning of the episode, not even when that episode, or beginning of the season, let alone when that episode started. How can you not have loved this episode? I loved it. Revolution has gotten so much better as the season has gone on, and now I can't wait for season 2.
Yeah, I agree. Completely. I will just mention that some people are saying, Jim in Wisconsin says maybe it's Joe Biden because he was used as a code for the rebels in Soul Train.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Unfortunately, I don't think our current vice president would make it 15 years in the wilderness because he's pretty old, from my understanding.
Yeah, he seems pretty old.
Without power, I don't know what age he'd be able to live to and still be able to command a nation.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think they're going to use a real person, a real name of somebody that's in power.
Right.
I don't see the win for that, but you never know. You know, they used Affleck as the leader for California. We did get
but
that
we still don't know if that's who it is.
That's right. We don't. So. All right. Well, good stuff. I thought it was a great season finale. You guys gave us a ton of feedback. We got more feedback for this episode than any we've ever received. No surprise there, because it was the finale. We gave you guys a couple of extra days, so we have some great stuff coming in our feedback podcast that will be episode 38. So look for that too. Hopefully, everyone will tune in for that and listen to all the great thoughts and theories that the listeners sent in. But let's finish out this podcast with the quote of the week. Alrighty, so the winner from last week was... Can you stop, Rachel?
How's it going back home?
Well, if you can't turn the power on, that's the end of Georgia and the rebels.
Oh, good. So, no pressure.
Yeah, can we do this later? Tell him what you told me.
Rachel's in the tower with Monroe.
How did that happen?
She went down to kill him. To blow herself up.
And you just let her.
Can you stop Rachel from doing anything? Because I can't.
That's fascinating, Chubbs. Now, can you get us inside that door or not?
With this book, I can, you dick.
With this TNT, I can, Chubbs. All right.
Yeah, that was lame, by the way.
We'll get to that in the feedback. We got some feedback on that for sure. Okay, 4 new quotes for this one, and the first one is one that I mentioned we would be getting. This one is called "My Head is Spinning."
What's this? A little demolition project. We don't know what's going on down there, but we have to stop Rachel Matheson. That woman cannot be allowed to turn the lights on.
Why is that?
Well, you really think we should hand that kind of power over to Georgia? Or the other republics?
Sorry, sir. It's just my head is spinning. From how quickly you switch sides.
Bam. All right, quote number 2, borderline erotic fixation.
Well, I'm gonna have you killed for this. And your wife.
Sir, I could never say this under your employ, But you have become foolish and deranged, and you have a borderline erotic fixation on Miles Matheson. There, I said it. I feel better.
That's a good quote, isn't it?
Yeah, it needed to be said.
Yeah, it did. Quote number 3, we're still brothers.
You asked me why I tried to kill you. You're asking the wrong question, Baz. Ask me why I couldn't. We're still brothers. And as much as I hate that, let me tell you I do. That's never gonna change.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
Moving on.
And the final quote is, I'm asking for your help.
How many more people have to die for this?
We're doing this for Danny.
Danny's dead, Mom. It breaks my heart. But he's gone and he's not coming back. But I'm here. Your daughter's standing right in front of you. I'm alive. And I'm asking for your help.
All right, so the quotes are up right now on the website. We probably won't ever announce the winner of this quote of the week because, maybe we will on we'll do a season 1 recap podcast before season 2 starts. Maybe we'll do it then. Well, I think we'll do one. Look, as I mentioned, Comic-Con is coming up. We'll be there. Revolution will have a panel. We anticipate bringing you that panel as a podcast. I don't know what else we'll have that's specifically Revolution between now and just before season 2 starts when we do our season 1 recap, unless we get some interviews or something along the way. So I don't know if we'll ever reveal the winner to this one or not, so you may just have to go to the website and check it out. It's up for another 5 days. But right now, the winner is Borderline Erotic Fixation, and I think that's probably the one I'm going to vote for, too.
Yeah.
It's a great quote. Needed to be said, just as you said, just as Tom himself said.
Yeah.
All right, so that's like I said, go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. Click on the polls tab to vote for your favorite quote of this episode. All right, I told you before we get out of here today, I want to talk about our summer plans. I've mentioned a little bit of it along the way. We have several podcasts that we do under the Golden Spiral Media umbrella. A lot of them have been on hiatus for almost a year now. Some of them, I think, have been a year. We have, let me just kind of go through the Golden Spiral Media podcasts that we have. We have the Revolution podcast. You're obviously familiar with that. We have the Fringe podcast about the Fox television show Fringe, and there might still be some content we'll produce for that from time to time, but for the most part, we've wrapped that show now that Fringe is over. But we also have Dad Hacker Podcast, which is a podcast for the geeky dad and kind of fun family activity and geeky things for you and your kids. That podcast is on indefinite hiatus. Clint and I definitely want to bring that back, but we just don't have any ETA on when we're going to be able to do that because that will be one that only Clint and I do, and his schedule right now is pretty tough. So we'll see where that one goes. Don't look for any content on Dad Hacker this summer. I don't expect that anyway. And then we have the Portable Orchard podcast, and that's a podcast that we started to cover Apple iOS stuff. So mobile being portable, Orchard meaning Apple is kind of a coded way of saying, mobile Apple discussions. And that podcast is also kind of right now on indefinite hiatus. We might bring that back at some point, but we don't have any plans to at this point. So we'll get those out of the way first. Then we have Triplecast. We have Cutting the Cable podcast. And in the fall, we'll be launching the Almost Human podcast. We released episode 0 of that last week. It's in iTunes. You can search for Almost Human podcast. You can find us. That will be a new show that Golden Spiral Media is producing in the fall about the upcoming show, Almost Human. Joel Wyman, who is one of the executive producers of Fringe, J. Abrams is behind this project. Warner Brothers is producing it. Bad Robot is producing it. Carl Urban is one of the lead actors on it. And a lot of the Fringe writers and producers are also a part of this project. So It is a very exciting project. You can go to almosthumanpodcast.com, and it'll redirect you over to our website where you can learn the more information about that. We anticipate seeing the pilot at Comic-Con. We haven't confirmed that. We think it'll be there, so we'll bring you content for that this summer. Now that leads me to Cutting the Cable podcast. I am looking at bringing in some other hosts for that. We brought in Jeremy for this podcast. We're looking at adding some other hosts to fill in that role as well for the Cutting the Cable podcast. So I anticipate at some point this summer, now that I'm able to do new media full time, I anticipate being able to bring you some Cutting the Cable stuff this summer. I can't announce yet at this point who my co-host would be for that, and it could be a rotating co-host. But look for that. And then definitely this summer, probably in the next 30 days, you'll be getting some new triple cast from us. I'm sorry, I meant to tell you on Cutting the Cable, what that podcast covers, if you're not familiar with it, is technology and entertainment that is not TV based. So it's a podcast for cable cutters. We're gonna talk about entertainment and TV and movie that's available on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime or other places like those services. We're also going to talk about technology that you can use to consume all of that stuff. So that's what Cutting the Cable is all about. And then Triplecast is a really cool podcast that we started a year ago where we take 3 movies, and it's always movies that have something in common. They could have the same composer, they could have the same actor, they could be based off the same screenplay. They have some sort of commonality between 3 movies. We review each movie and just kind of talk about them. So that's what Triplecast is all about. That one will be coming back within the next 30 days. We will be starting off with a Triplecast over 3 Alfred Hitchcock films. And I am super excited about that. I don't yet know who the co-host will be on that. I've got it narrowed down to 2 people. And then we'll have another series right after that. So you'll get multiple sets of Triplecast this summer. That'll be the main podcast that we'll be pushing this summer. So look for that from Golden Spiral Media. So you can find all of those podcasts, even the ones that we've already done. For Cutting the Cable, we did a time travel series of about 10 or 12 time travel movies. We did that last summer. We also did a whole series on Firefly, so all of you Firefly fans, you can go check that out. So you can find all of those over at goldenspiralmedia.com. But we'll have some new content coming out, so you can find all of those over at our website. We also have an all-inclusive link. You can find it in iTunes and in Stitcher. Just look for Golden Spiral Media All-Inclusive, and that will get you every podcast that we produce. Almost Human is in there. This one, the Revolution podcast, the Fringe podcast, everything we do. So if you just want to make sure you get everything that we produce, the All-Inclusive feed is for you. So that's what you can expect from us this summer. We're also, I mentioned San Diego Comic-Con. Jeremy, I forgot to mention, you have a desire to do a Christian Bale Triplecast with me, so we'll probably do that at some point this summer, after the Alfred Hitchcock one. We might do something else in between. I haven't figured out all that. All I know right now is we're definitely starting out with Alfred Hitchcock because that's what we announced the last time we did a Triplecast series. So I've talked about Cutting the Cable possibly coming back and Almost Human definitely coming back. So look for all of those things from Golden Spiral Media this summer. In addition, the side thing that I talk about from time to time is through a company called TV Talk. I produce all of their shows. I host a couple of shows. I did Doctor Who. I did Person of Interest. And starting this coming Sunday, I'll be doing Falling Skies with Foamy Once. Emily, you guys have heard her on our feedback podcast. She makes it into the chat room a lot of times. I don't know if she's here right now or not. But anyway, so TV Talk produces a lot of great shows. They're short form. They're like 20 minutes long. So go over to tvtalk.com and you can listen to all their stuff. But anyway, I would encourage you to check those out. That's a good place to get a lot of current summer shows. If you like podcasts, it's a podcasting style. You have to either listen to it through the website or get the app. So you can get it in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. So for your iOS device. So that's all of that I would recommend you do this summer to get your fix on either myself or Jeremy or Golden Spiral Media or all of the above.
Huzzah!
How's that for a big spiel, huh? Did it do okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Contact information. Jeremy, how about you spiel for a while? You want to cover the contact information?
All right. I think I might be able to do that, assuming that I can read this. We're no longer recorded live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I believe we're going to pick up next season at 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays.
On
Revolution Podcast?
Yes, on Thursdays. That's right.
Right, next season. So be looking for us. Wait, no. Yeah, episodes Wednesday night. We're recording Thursday nights.
Yes.
Which coincides with tonight. So, which is a Thursday night.
That's right, yes.
So, yeah, the Revolution Podcast is now recorded live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Starting in the fall.
And starting in the fall.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say that. All right. So you can submit your theories and feedback to us at 304-837-2278 or at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. If you have any feedback for us over the summer, I don't think we have a deadline, so just shoot us an email. You can also contact us at Twitter at GSM Podcasts and Facebook at Golden Spiral Media.
That's right. Did you get the phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless I gave the wrong one.
I tuned you out there for a little while, I'm not going to lie. All right. We got some good positive reviews on Facebook this week. Thank you to those who did that. We absolutely appreciate that. If you have not gone over to Facebook and submitted a review for us, we would certainly appreciate that. And until next time, Jeremy, Kiwi on!
Nice. I lost everything I was going to say about how awesome D-Day was, because today is June 6th. Happy D-Day.
The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Kripke Enterprises, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. For advertising opportunities, live show, and other Golden Spiral Media podcast productions, visit goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2013, Golden Spiral Media.